It's Edlin from LUCIDPIXUL, and welcome to my last art talk of 2021. You see how I did that? I'm so clever. I tricked you, didn't I? So I thought I'd do things a little bit differently this time around, since this special video, since it's the last of the year, and it's been an amazing year despite all of the crap we've had to deal with. I've loved 2021 and I can't wait for 2022. It's probably going to be full of just as much bullshit as the last few years, but I don't care because you guys are awesome and you deserve it. But I'm going to do multiple topics today because I've just been inspired by so many different things, and there's so many things I want to mention. I want to both mention where I found this inspiration, and I'm going to link the videos that inspired me today, and I want to talk about them from my own personal perspective because every one of these are incredibly important and apply to you, I guarantee, in some shape or form. The first topic that I'd like to talk about is inspired by a very recent video, an announcement by Neistat. If you're not familiar with him, then you live a very sheltered life, I'm afraid. He's probably one of the most talented content creators and video producers on YouTube right now, based in New York. An incredibly inspiring guy, and somebody who you could say is completely lost in his own little creative wonderland. His studio, how he puts things together, is so him. It's so unique. He's got so much integrity and he's so pure in his art form, and I absolutely love him for that. I very much relate to him in that way too, that he just kind of goes with his own interior flow. However, the reason what inspired me particularly this time was one of his most recent videos where he announced the fact that he was, well, starting his own school, his own video production school, where he shares all of his own secrets to how he produced videos, which I can only imagine is going to be nothing short of stellar, looking at what this guy's talent and his personality. But announcing his school is not the whole reason I wanted to talk about him. It was because of what inspired him to do it in the first place. What he said was that he did not do well in the traditional school system. He didn't like the traditional school system and did not thrive in it. And if you've been following my art talks for any length of time, you'd know that I just didn't connect with the educators. I did not connect with the politics. I did not connect with these prison-like school walls inside the classrooms. I did have some teachers that were inspiring and wonderful, but they were few and far between. I did make some great friends. I did have some great teachers. And no, I don't have a bias against the traditional school system, at least not overtly. I do encourage my own kids to go to school, and I do make sure to follow up with their homework and all that kind of stuff. I do think it's very important in that regard. And as a result of it, for many years, I had a very poor opinion of myself in regards to education. The tagline in my little quote in my yearbook, my graduation yearbook quote was, "Made it by the skin of my teeth," which was both an homage to Megadeth, which was who I listened to a lot back then, and, well, the truth. I made it by the skin of my teeth. So it was really something that I felt I had to struggle myself through. But here's the thing. When I finally left that, and as years passed, that negative opinion of myself followed suit. And I just kind of had this overall feeling of, this overall impression of myself as being an underachiever. An overall impression of myself being, I don't know, a slacker, somebody who just didn't do well, somebody who wasn't particularly smart. I was always somebody who, quote, had a lot of potential. I got that lip service from students and you know, administration all the time, but I didn't apply myself. So I just felt like I sucked at the school system. And honest to goodness, the only reason why I really pushed myself through it was because, well, I came from an educated family. A mother who was well educated and sisters that were very well educated and stuff. So, you know, I came from an academic family. So I just felt it was a prerequisite to go through. But had I not, I don't know. And then, just as Neistat states in his video, he discovered himself. He discovered his passion. He allowed himself to forget about all of that despite the fact that it marked his entire upbringing, and discover what he loved for the first time. And when he did, he realized for the first time in his life that he didn't only not hate learning, he realized he was addicted to it. So much to the point that, well, as I just mentioned earlier, he's probably going to become one of the most celebrated educators on YouTube. If not of all time, for a very long time. You can tell by just the way he puts himself together, that he's not a product of a set system. He's a product of somebody who lives and breathes what he does. He's the embodiment of passion. He learns from every source of life. I've quoted The Last Samurai many times in the past where Tom Cruise mentions how, or he observes at least, how the samurai tie everything about the art of fighting into life. That fighting and war and protecting the emperor are their core, and everything else from agriculture to love to raising children to architecture to landscaping to philosophy all ties in to that. As does everything in my world tie into my art, from video production to listening to music to dance to everything. Everything ties into art. I look at the world through the lens of an artist, and as do you, right? We are kindred spirits after all. And I want you to know something. If at any point you consider yourself incompetent, outranked, or just, a failure in any which way, shape, or form with relation to education in general, or the education system that you are a part of, or your lack of ability to learn things, you would be lying to yourself to think that that's an indication of A, your ability to learn, or B, your love of learning. And what I would encourage you to do is to discover your passion, discover your calling. I just finished watching the movie about Steve Jobs, which is fantastic if you ever get a chance to see it. And in it, Steve Jobs, through a lot of different documentaries, was regarded as somebody who really believed in his instincts, right? Follow your instincts, even though logic might say otherwise. An innovator is somebody who goes by feeling, right? The law of attraction, so to speak. Now, there's good and bad that comes with that. That instinct of his probably cost him his life, right? But it also led him to great innovation. It led him to live through a vision and create through a vision rather than creating through a budget, right? And as artists, you need to discover that same side of yourself and tie that into your technicality, tie that into your wisdom through your experience. At the core of what you create should be a guiding light. This is exactly the same reason why I love the company Clocks and Colors, and why I made a video and promoted them on my channel. I didn't promote them because I was looking for free rings. I already have a huge collection of their stuff. I've paid for all of it out of my own pocket. If you watch what they produce at Clocks and Colors, they're off on a rampage of discovery. They get into everything from, they started off doing rings and bracelets, and now they're doing boxing gloves and punching bags and cowboy hats and flasks, and they've discovered themselves, and they know exactly what ties into their interests and their passions. I witnessed this in my daughter Emily, who's an artist as well, who's doing her last year in illustration in college. And I watch her as she is her own living world. She always has been. And I find that's probably one of the things that inspires me the most about her. And one could say that, well, of course she's an artist. She was raised by an artist dad. Yeah, I have zero to do with her talent. I have zero to do with her upbringing. I haven't taught her a damn thing in art. Nor have I ever told her how to present herself or what to draw. She's a completely foreign entity for myself artistically. All I could ever do as her father growing up is just sit back and enjoy, really. And this is exactly what I want for you too. I want you to discover your true calling. This is exactly why I got the quote, "Know thyself" in Latin, because it's cooler sounding, on my arm, because of how much that means to me and how much that discovery of self helped me to overcome everything about myself that I thought was a flaw. And I want you to know that you are not flawed. You're gifted, and you just have to know where to look for it. The next topic was inspired by Marcus Brownlee, who, again, is a hugely popular content creator, a tech YouTuber. And he posted a video 9 days ago that I really liked. It was called, and I have it right in front of me, Smartphone Cameras versus Reality. And in it, he makes this fascinating distinction, and a very important distinction, between how a professional photographer with professional camera equipment determines a good quality camera versus a general consumer who posts things on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And he discusses the qualities in cameras that these two target audiences look for. Where a professional videographer, like somebody like me who produces YouTube videos and stuff, is generally looking for the most neutral, the most faithful representation of reality. In fact, the more neutral, the better, because this gives the videographer or the photographer the ability to edit a higher dynamic range image. Whereas a general consumer who wants to post things on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, if you still use Facebook, good on you, but how they're looking for things, images that are already great right out of the camera, because they're going to be doing little to no editing, perhaps a couple of Instagram filters or something like that. They're not looking to spend hours or days editing videos and films. So they're looking for something that already looks great. And what's considered, quote, great, which is why I love Marcus's video. He's a very down-to-earth guy for somebody with his level of popularity. But it's an illusion. It's an illusion of reality. When I look through, after getting used to looking at myself through a professional Sony camera, when I look at, and I have a very good camera. I have the iPhone 13 Pro Max on my, that's the kind of camera I'm using, which I think I've taken 3 pictures with since I got it. I'm not a big cell phone camera guy. But when I look at myself through that camera, my skin is more vibrant. My eyes are whiter and crisper. The colors of my eyes pop more. The contrast of my eyebrows is sharper. The image is sharper in all the right places and softer in all the right places. The focal length is the most flattering. It's a great distortion of reality. And the more we are fed imagery, the more we are fed this idealism, the more we're advertised to, the more, whether we like it or not, our perspective of beauty, our perspective of reality starts to become more and more controlled. We have less and less time to observe the world through our own unique lens. And it's very interesting because my girlfriend had a guest over yesterday, a friend of hers who's really awesome. We really got along really well. Who is a world traveler. She's a judge and a lawyer, and she's worked around everywhere. And we got into talking about Israel and Africa and Russia and Poland and Germany and South America, all these different places she's been and lived. And I remember she was talking about something that a lot of my students, my African students, have told me as well, and that it's a very, very different reality in Africa compared to North America. And she said one of the things that hits you when you've lived in Africa for half a year like she did, or maybe even longer than that, and you come back to North America or you come back to Canada, the first thing that hits you is how you are advertised to everywhere. Because when you're in Africa, there's no advertising. The advertising is the guy you meet on the street and who you buy food from. And then that's it. That's all the advertising you got. And when she came back to Canada, she was literally upset and discouraged by how everything is advertising at her. She felt attacked by advertising, something that we tend to be very numb to. But if you look around at your space and your studios and everything like that, heck, I just did a studio tour video where I advertised hundreds of different things. This is something we're very accustomed to. And advertising in and of itself is not evil. It's not a bad thing. It can be a wonderful thing if handled right. But where I find that advertising can be damaging to us artists in particular is how much it starts to sway our vision. And this can be great because it's exposing us to different qualities of imagery and videos and audio and different types of production and different types of fashion, which are all wonderful artistic tools. However, if you observe artists like Rembrandt, Modigliani, Sargent, Monet, Degas, Renoir, look at any classic artist, any studied artist, what you realize is that you aren't only witnessing their great art, their great interpretation of their own unique reality, but you're also witnessing an incredibly unique form of observation. Pay attention to the difference on how John Singer Sargent would capture the human form, the human likeness. How he was very loose, incredibly minimalistic, very true to vision in that sense. He's an artist who I teach a lot in my mentorship. But he had this extremely clever way of observing a human ego. I remember looking at a painting that he did where it's a portrait of a woman, and she's standing, her face, very beautiful, beautiful striking eyes, and her face is turned 3/4. And if you pay very close attention, you'll notice how Sargent used light in a very clever way on her face to highlight her eyes, but take the emphasis off of her nose, which was perhaps a little bit larger than the average ideal nose of the time. Although she would, by today's standards, she would have had a very ideal nose. Perhaps back then, not so much. And you could tell that Sargent was very sensitive to her feelings and very sensitive to how she wanted to be, well, immortalized. That's what artists did. They immortalized people. We still do. Don't take that for granted. So when in immortalizing her, he wanted her to feel that her likeness was going to be captured in the most beautiful way. The side of her that she wanted the world to see, through a lens of an artist who saw the beauty in her. And he focused on that. And he captured that flawlessly. But then you look a couple of paintings later, and there's a painting of a woman, many women, at this perfect profile. And how that profile was highlight with this high contrast, fair skin against a very dark background, so that the profile of her nose and chin and lips and forehead were captured. You could see how, in one woman's case, how he emphasized a feature that might be considered more idealistic at the time, and to somebody else highlight other features that might be idealistic at the time. He was capturing a person's sensitivity. And he immortalized that so that they felt good. He made people happy. And he made people feel very highly regarded, which is why that painting, that Madame X painting that he did, that incidentally Nicole Kidman did a photography pose of, that painting almost ruined his career, if you didn't know. A little art history lesson for you. That painting almost ruined his career because in the original version of it, her strap, God forbid, was lowered. Which is the equivalent of pornography at the time that he painted that painting. And you have to take into account the fact that she was captured and painted by an artist who only painted nobility, who painted the dukes and duchesses and the politicians and the lawyers, people who were very wealthy. That was his clientele. And for that clientele to be insulted by somebody who is most likely, well, must have been a prostitute, to pose in such a lewd, crude way, which by today's standards she absolutely was not, that almost destroyed his career. Until he eventually fixed the strap. And if you look at that painting, you'll notice how the bust section of that beautiful black velvet dress she's wearing looks a little bit lopsided. Well, it's because he didn't fix the dress, he just fixed the strap. Because the strap was this symbolic sign of inappropriateness. People assumed maybe he was a lover of his or something like that, if he was into women in the first place. Nobody knows. Turn the page and look at a Rembrandt painting. And if you look at a Rembrandt, he had the absolute opposite focus and priority when it came to his artwork. Rembrandt wanted to capture what he believed was true reality. His intention was the opposite of idealism. It was reality. And he was particularly brutal with the details when it came to his own self-portraits. How he painted himself as he aged. You notice that if you look at a Rembrandt painting close up, every pimple, every discoloration, every varicose vein, every receding hairline, every look of insecurity, every unflattering light pattern on the face, although he was famous for the light patterns on his face. They literally named a light pattern from Rembrandt, right? Rembrandt lighting. But it was absolutely unflattering. He felt that by doing that, and I feel he succeeded in doing that, by capturing that, he was presenting a soul to you. And when you look, if you're looking at a Rembrandt painting, try to find something that's a little bit higher res, something that's not small and, edited too much. Look at it close up, nice and big, and stare at that face and analyze all the fine details of these oily, unflattering brushstrokes. And what you're going to get is a human soul looking back at you. He captured the soul of himself. And when you look at him, you feel like you know him through that brushstroke. Now, I'm only praising the old masters, but let's bring this into today's context. Let's look at an artist who comparably also admittedly painted very simplified shapes and admittedly said he wasn't the greatest draftsman on the planet, but is gifted at capturing energy, a cuddly romantic moment between lovers in the rain, or a father sitting in front of a TV passed out with his newborn curled up baby on his tummy. These or a couple kissing and having a coffee in the kitchen. And you might already know who I'm talking about if you've got the image in your head. Pascal Campion. I love his art. Even though I paint nothing like him, I have so much respect for his vision. I have so much respect for his ability to connect emotionally to his work. And when you look at a Pascal Campion painting, it is objectively beautiful to look at, but not because it's technically badass. It's beautiful because he's captured memory. He's captured feeling. He's really, truly true to himself in his art, and that resonates through the colors and the composition and the textures and the light and the contrast and the pose and the smiles of these people that he captures and he paints. I love his work. Look at Bobby Chiu. There's another artist that I'm always praising on my channel. He learned how to translate two major things, and probably more secret ingredients that I don't know about because I don't know what goes on in the private recesses of his brain. I wish I did. But two things: an absolute understanding and love for nature, and an utter sense of awkwardness. And he captured it. He found this beautiful crossroads between somebody who felt awkward, somebody who felt a bit invisible in school, somebody who might have been a bit shy, but somebody who had a lot of love. Well, has a lot of love. I imagine that love didn't go anywhere because it hasn't gone anywhere in his art. And when you look at his characters, as much as he runs a school and he's this incredibly talented entrepreneur and he's amazing at networking different students, and that does not detract from when he sits down in his little private place and he starts to paint. He captures these little moments of magic where you can look at this equally disturbingly ugly but absolutely lovably beautiful and adorable creatures, or how he captures the adorable and beautiful yet ironically cruel side of nature in some creature, in some made-up fantasy, beautifully rendered fantasy creature sitting on a branch, who's sitting there looking poised and elegant and colorful and huggable. And all of these little adoring little insects and creatures all gather around it because he's got these very alluring red petals, flower petals. And they're all coming to sniff him. And it looks like this very classic Disney moment where they're all gathering around him to admire his beautiful plumage, not knowing that they're about to become his lunch. And one of them already did, because he's got these little dragonfly wings sticking out of the mouth. Beautifully drawn dragon wings sticking out of this mouth. And I gotta sit there. Every single time I look at one of his paintings, I smile, because I see a real raw human coming through that. And in order for him to achieve that, he had to stop trying to show off to the camera. He had to stop trying to show off, and he had to discover true beauty. And that true beauty came from the reality of who he was as a very loving and compassionate and empathetic and awkward young boy who grew up to be equally beautiful and compassionate and empathetic and awkward adult who just happens to run a school. Right? And I'm not just saying this as lip service. I'm not just doing a shout out to Bobby Chiu because I want to be on his good side. I don't give a shit. I honestly don't. It has nothing to do with it. It's because I love what he does, and when I look at what he does along with so many other artists out there, I'm reminded to be authentic. And I'm reminded that I have to step away from all of this, quote, idealistic art out there. And I have to reach deep down inside and find my own sense of beauty. And it's funny because despite the fact that I paint so many, quote, dark themes about dark folklore and, ghostly creatures that drown unsuspecting men by seducing them into their waterway, or lore about, tragic stories of a woman who drowned her kids in a fit of jealousy when her husband arrived home with his new lover, and then walks the water banks in torment, crying out loud, La Llorona. I'm talking about La Llorona. These tragic stories. I was raised on these tragic stories. I was raised by a Polish, family with a Polish grandmother and a mother where, although I wasn't raised speaking Polish, I was raised by people who thought that way. I was raised by that energy. And a lot of my Slavic students very often tell me, yeah, you've got that energy in you. You're very relatable in that sense. And that ended up translating into what I love. And this is why I became such a fan of Miyazaki's vision and the whole Souls series. I don't paint dark things because I like darkness. For any more the same reason that Guillermo del Toro does in his paintings. I don't paint them for the sake of being dark. I don't like the grotesque for the sake of the grotesque. I paint it because it's beautiful. Because the textures and the richness and the age and the human history and the rawness of it's captivating to me. It's objectively beautiful, and it inspires me every single day. You need to give yourself a chance to do that. Give yourself a social media break, especially if you're going through ArtStation or Instagram or Pinterest and you're finding yourself overwhelmed with a feeling of incompetence. Those are all visions that don't belong to you. And your truest, most beautiful vision is the truest form of yourself. And if you don't believe me, look at Sargent, look at Rembrandt, look at Pascal Campion or Bobby Chiu. Look at all of these artists. You love them because they're authentic. With that said, I'm very happy to share my final thoughts of 2020 with you. I want you to take care of yourself and take care of your loved ones as well. And of course, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.